The crisp morning air of San Francisco International Airport filled the jet bridge as Jessica Martinez strode purposefully toward Flight 217. Her polished name tag gleamed under the fluorescent lights, reflecting her 15 years of dedicated service to Ali Airways. The early December sunshine streamed through the terminal windows, casting long shadows across the boarding area as passengers began to gather for the transcontinental flight to New York. Jessica's perfectly pressed uniform and composed demeanor masked her slight exhaustion from the pre-dawn wake-up call. She had arrived extra early today to prepare the first-class cabin for a group of Silicon Valley executives who regularly traveled this route. After years of service in Elite's premium cabin, she knew most of their frequent flyers by name and preference. Mr. Anderson with his precise coffee requirements, Mrs. Chen and her special dietary requests, and Dr. Park who always needed an extra blanket. As she arranged the imported Egyptian cotton pillows and verified the temperature of the champagne, Jessica mentally reviewed her checklist. The exclusive first-class cabin, with its 12 spacious pods, represented the airline's commitment to luxury travel. Each pod, priced at nearly $12,000 for this cross-country journey, featured hand-stitched leather seats, personal entertainment systems, and gourmet dining options that rival high-end restaurants. The familiar rhythm of pre-boarding was interrupted when Jessica glanced up to see a young woman entering the first-class cabin. The passenger appeared to be in her early 30s, wearing pristine white sneakers, designer jeans, and a cashmere sweater. Casual but expensive, Jessica noted with her trained eye. What caught her attention wasn't just the casual attire, but the quiet confidence with which the woman moved through the cabin. Lauren Thompson, though Jessica didn't know her name yet, expertly maneuvered her carry-on into the overhead compartment of Pod 3A, one of the most sought-after seats in the cabin. Her natural curls were pulled back in a neat bun, and a pair of subtle diamond studs adorned her ears. No other jewelry adorned her fingers or wrists, contrasting with the usual display of status symbols Jessica was accustomed to seeing in first class. The other passengers began filtering in. Mark Anderson in his bespoke suit, already asking about his coffee, Diana Chen gracefully taking her usual spot in 2D, and several other familiar faces. They all shared knowing glances and subtle nods of recognition, the unspoken language of frequent premium travelers. Meanwhile, Lauren had settled into her pod, pulled out a sleek laptop decorated with tech company stickers, and begun reviewing what appeared to be complex financial documents. Jessica found herself pausing in her routine. Something about this passenger stirred an uncomfortable feeling she couldn't quite name. In 15 years of first-class service, she had developed an instinct for identifying passengers who might have wandered into the wrong cabin. Yet this woman's demeanor suggested she was exactly where she belonged, even if she didn't fit the usual profile. As the boarding continued, Jessica noticed other flight attendants and passengers casting curious glances at Pod 3A. Lauren remained absorbed in her work, occasionally typing rapid-fire messages on her phone, seemingly oblivious to the subtle attention she was attracting. Her belongings, a premium leather laptop bag and a small carry-on from a luxury brand, spoke of wealth, but her overall appearance challenged the traditional first-class passenger stereotype. The morning sunlight shifted, catching the edge of Lauren's laptop screen and illuminating rows of numbers and graphs. Jessica straightened her uniform and made a decision. As the lead flight attendant for first class, it was her responsibility to ensure every passenger was in their correct seat. After all, ticketing mistakes did happen occasionally, and she prided herself on handling such situations with grace and discretion. With a practiced smile, Jessica began moving toward Pod 3A, her heels clicking softly against the carpet. The next few moments would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge her perceptions and change the course of both their lives in unexpected ways. Jessica's practiced smile remained perfectly in place as she approached Pod 3A. Years of handling delicate situations had taught her the art of maintaining composure while addressing potential seating mix-ups. The gentle hum of the aircraft's auxiliary power unit provided a subtle backdrop to the quiet murmur of first-class passengers settling into their pods. "Good morning," Jessica began, her voice carrying the warm yet professional tone that had earned her countless customer service accolades. "I'd be happy to help you find your seat. Sometimes our booking system can be a bit confusing." She gestured subtly toward the economy cabin behind the curtain, maintaining eye contact with Lauren. Lauren looked up from her laptop screen, where a complex spreadsheet displayed quarterly projections for several major airlines. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes held a knowing look that Jessica missed entirely. "Actually," Lauren replied with a gentle smile, "I'm exactly where I need to be." She reached into her laptop bag and produced her boarding pass with an unhurried grace. Jessica examined the boarding pass, her trained eyes quickly scanning the details. First class, seat 3A. Everything appeared to be in order, yet something still felt off to her. The ticket showed a full-fare first-class purchase, not an upgrade or award ticket. Still, Jessica's instincts, shaped by thousands of flights and countless passenger interactions, urged her to verify further. "If you'll excuse me for just a moment," Jessica said, maintaining her professional demeanor, "I'd like to double-check something with my supervisor. We've had some ticketing system issues lately." This wasn't entirely true, but it was a practiced line she used before in similar situations. Around them, the first-class cabin had grown quieter. Mr. Anderson paused mid-sip of his precisely prepared coffee, watching the interaction over the rim of his cup. Diana Chen pretended to be absorbed in her magazine, but her attention was clearly focused on the unfolding scene. The air felt charged with unspoken assumptions and growing tension. Lauren closed her laptop slowly, her movements deliberate and composed. "By all means," she replied, her voice carrying a hint of amusement that made Jessica slightly uncomfortable. "While you're checking, I'd love to speak with your supervisor about Elite Airways' current customer service protocols. I have some thoughts about potential improvements." The subtle shift in Lauren's tone caught Jessica off guard. It wasn't the defensive reaction she'd expected, nor was it the confused response of someone in the wrong seat. Instead, Lauren's words carried the weight of authority that Jessica usually associated with airline executives. As Jessica turned to fetch her supervisor, she noticed more details she had initially overlooked. Lauren's casual sweater was cashmere, probably worth more than Jessica's monthly salary. Her simple leather laptop bag was from a boutique brand that catered exclusively to tech executives. The stickers on her laptop included logos from several prominent venture capital firms. Sarah Chen, the flight supervisor, was already making her way down the aisle, having observed the interaction from the galley. Her expression shifted from professional concern to sudden recognition as she caught sight of Lauren. The color drained from Sarah's face, and she quickly whispered something to Jessica that made her stomach drop. "Miss Thompson," Sarah said, her voice carrying a newfound note of respect and slight panic. "I hope everything is to your satisfaction today. Please let us know if you need anything at all during the flight." Jessica stood frozen, her mind racing to process the implications of Sarah's reaction. The other passengers were now openly watching the scene unfold, their expressions a mix of curiosity and dawning realization. Lauren's laptop screen had flipped to a new document, an internal Elite Airways board meeting agenda with her name listed prominently at the top. The next words from Sarah would completely transform what had started as a routine flight into a powerful lesson about assumptions, privilege, and the changing face of corporate America. Jessica's world was about to shift on its axis, all because of a single misguided moment. Sarah Chen's hands trembled slightly as she pulled up the VIP passenger list on her tablet. The morning sunlight streaming through the aircraft windows caught the screen's surface, momentarily obscuring the text that had just changed her entire day. She took a steadying breath before turning back to face the situation unfolding in front of her. "Miss Thompson," Sarah began again, her voice carrying a new note of deference, "I sincerely apologize for any inconvenience. We're honored to have you aboard today." The transformation in Sarah's demeanor was striking enough to draw curious glances from nearby passengers, who had been pretending not to watch the scene unfold. Lauren Thompson closed her laptop with deliberate care, revealing a sleek business card holder beneath it. With fluid grace, she extracted a card and handed it to Jessica, who accepted it with slightly trembling fingers. The embossed text caught the light. Lauren Thompson, CEO, Summit Ventures. Board member, Elite Airways. The reality of the situation crashed over Jessica like a wave. Lauren Thompson wasn't just any passenger. She was the mastermind behind Summit Ventures' recent $300 million investment in Elite Airways, a deal that had made headlines across the financial world. Her firm now owned a significant stake in the airline, and her innovative leadership style had already begun transforming the company's approach to modern air travel. Mr. Anderson, the usually reserved executive in 2B, nearly choked on his carefully prepared coffee. He, like many others in the business world, had followed Lauren's meteoric rise in the venture capital scene. Her reputation for turning struggling companies into industry leaders was legendary, and her recent focus on revolutionizing air travel had been the talk of Wall Street. "I've actually been looking forward to experiencing our first-class service firsthand," Lauren spoke, her voice warm but carrying an unmistakable note of authority. "It's important to understand every aspect of our passenger experience." The words are hung in the air, its significance not lost on anyone within earshot. Jessica's professional mask slipped for just a moment as the full weight of her earlier assumptions became clear. Lauren Thompson had been featured in Fortune magazine just last month, praised for her approach to inclusive leadership and her commitment to breaking down traditional barriers in corporate America. The magazine had specifically highlighted how she often traveled incognito to better understand customer experiences across various industries. Sarah quickly pulled up Lauren's executive profile on her tablet, her eyes widening as she read. At 32, Lauren had already transformed 3 major companies, earned a spot on Forbes 30 Under 30, and was known for her surprise visits to companies in her investment portfolio. Her casual appearance today wasn't a mistake. It was her trademark approach to understanding business operations from the ground up. "I believe," Lauren continued, her gaze steady and thoughtful, "that this presents an excellent opportunity for us to discuss how Elite Airways can better serve all its passengers." She gestured to the seat beside her, inviting Sarah to join her for a conversation that would likely reshape the airline's approach to customer service. The other first-class passengers had abandoned any pretense of disinterest, openly watching as the scene unfolded. Diana Chen, a senior vice president at a major tech company, was nodding approvingly from her seat, clearly impressed by Lauren's handling of the situation. As Jessica stepped back to allow Sarah and Lauren to talk, she caught a glimpse of Lauren's laptop screen. It displayed a draft of Elite Airways' new corporate inclusion initiative, with notes about improving staff training and passenger experience. The document's title, "Building a More Inclusive Sky," seemed to capture both the irony and the opportunity of the moment. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, illuminating a scene that would soon become a powerful story of transformation within Elite Airways, all because of an unexpected encounter at 30,000 feet. The first-class cabin of Flight 217 hummed with a different kind of energy as the aircraft reached its cruising altitude. Jessica moved through her service routine mechanically, her mind replaying the morning's events like a movie she couldn't pause. Each time she passed Pod 3A, she felt the weight of her earlier assumptions pressing against her chest. Lauren had transformed her pod into a mobile office, her laptop displaying complex spreadsheets, while she conducted a quiet discussion with Sarah about Elite Airways' future. Her thoughtful questions about employee training programs and passenger experience initiatives revealed a deep understanding of the airline industry that went far beyond mere investment interest. The true measure of luxury isn't just in the thread count of our blankets or the vintage of our champagne, Lauren was explaining to Sarah, her voice carrying quietly through the cabin. It's in how we make every passenger feel valued, regardless of what they're wearing or which cabin they're seated in. Diana Chen had moved to the empty seat across from Lauren, the 2 women now engaged in an animated discussion about corporate culture and innovation. Jessica couldn't help but notice how Lauren's casual attire hadn't prevented her from commanding the complete attention of one of Silicon Valley's most respected executives. In the galley, Jessica's hands shook slightly as she prepared the first-class meal service. Her colleague Michael touched her shoulder gently. "Hey, you couldn't have known," he whispered, trying to offer comfort. But Jessica knew that was exactly the problem. She had acted on assumptions she never should have made. Through the cabinet window, the clouds stretched endlessly beneath them, a carpet of white that seemed to mirror the blank slate Jessica wished she had started with this morning. She watched as Lauren accepted a simple sparkling water instead of the premium champagne offered, another subtle reminder that appearances and preferences didn't always align with stereotypes. Mr. Anderson, who had witnessed the entire morning's events, caught Jessica's eye as she served his meal. "You know," he said quietly, "I was in a meeting with Miss Thompson last month. She arrived in sneakers there too." Half the board didn't realize who she was until she started discussing the company's 5-year projection plans. Changed the entire dynamic of the meeting. He paused, then added, "Sometimes our biggest learning moments come from our most uncomfortable situations." The news of Lauren's identity had spread throughout the aircraft, reaching even the economy cabin. Flight attendants from other sections found excuses to pass through first class, each hoping to catch a glimpse of the executive who was already reshaping their company's future. Lauren acknowledged each of them with the same warm smile she offered earlier, even as she continued her work. Jessica approached Pod 3A with fresh coffee, her professional mask firmly in place despite her inner turmoil. Lauren looked up from her laptop and smiled. "Perfect timing," she said warmly. "I was just reviewing Elite's current training protocols. Would you mind sharing your perspective on them? After all, you're the one implementing them every day." The invitation to contribute caught Jessica off guard. Here was the woman she had tried to remove from first class, now asking for her professional input. The irony wasn't lost on her, but neither was the opportunity. As she settled into the conversation, Jessica realized that Lauren was demonstrating exactly the kind of leadership that had made her successful. The ability to turn challenging moments into opportunities for growth. As the flight continued eastward, the morning sun climbing higher in the sky, the first-class cabin had become more than just a luxury travel space. It had transformed into an impromptu think tank where titles mattered less than ideas, and where one misguided assumption was catalyzing meaningful change. The lesson unfolding at 35,000 feet would soon reach far beyond the confines of Flight 217. As Flight 217 crossed over the Midwest, the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the cabin windows. Lauren had temporarily set aside her work, choosing instead to observe the ebb and flow of service throughout the aircraft. Her laptop displayed a half-finished email to Elite's board about improving customer experience, but her attention was focused on something more immediate. Jessica moved through her service duties with practiced efficiency, yet each interaction now carried a weight of self-reflection. She noticed details she'd overlooked before, how Lauren offered her bottled water to an elderly passenger who seemed thirsty, the way she helped a young mother struggling with her baby's bag while passing through first class to reach the restroom, and her genuine interest in every crew member's name and story. During a quiet moment, Lauren caught Jessica's eye and gestured to the empty seat beside her. "Would you mind joining me for a moment?" Her voice was warm, lacking any trace of the authority she could have wielded. Jessica hesitated briefly before sliding into the seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "You know," Lauren began, turning slightly to face Jessica, "my first venture capital meeting was quite similar to this morning." She smiled at Jessica's surprised expression. "I showed up in jeans and a sweater, and the receptionist directed me to the intern orientation down the hall. I had already raised $50 million for my first fund." Jessica felt her shoulders relax slightly as Lauren continued. "But that receptionist later became one of our most valuable team members. She had excellent intuition about people. She just needed to expand her perspective about what success looks like." The parallel was clear but kindly delivered. Through the cabin window, the patchwork landscape of America rolled beneath them, fields and cities blending into a continuous tapestry. Lauren gestured to the view. From up here, everyone looks the same, doesn't they? It's only when we get closer that we start making distinctions. Diana Chen, who had been quietly listening from her seat, joined the conversation. When I started in tech 20 years ago, she offered, I was often mistaken for an assistant. Now, I run a division of 5,000 people. Her words carried no bitterness, only understanding. Jessica found herself sharing her own story. 15 years of watching First Class evolve, the changing faces of success, and the assumptions she carried without realizing their weight. I pride myself on providing excellent service, she admitted, but today made me realize that sometimes excellence means challenging our own perceptions. Lauren nodded thoughtfully, pulling out her tablet to show Jessica something. Look at these satisfaction scores from our customer surveys, she said, scrolling through colorful graphs. Notice anything interesting about the feedback patterns? The data revealed subtle biases in service quality that correlated with passengers' appearances and perceived status. The beautiful thing about data, Lauren explained, is that it doesn't care what someone looks like or what they're wearing. It just tells us the truth about our actions and their impacts. She paused, allowing Jessica to absorb the information. That's why I travel like this. The numbers tell us one story, but real experiences tell us how to change that story. As the afternoon light softened, the cabin settled into a peaceful rhythm. Mr. Anderson had fallen asleep over his financial reports, and Diana was quietly working on her laptop. The earlier tension had transformed into something more valuable, a shared understanding that would outlast this 6-hour flight. Lauren returned to her work, but not before sharing one last observation with Jessica. You know what makes Alight Airways special? She asked, gesturing around the cabin. It's not the seats or the service manual. It's people like you who care enough to learn and grow. That's what I invested in. The words settled over Jessica like a warm blanket, turning what had started as her most challenging day into one of her most meaningful. As Flight 217 began its initial descent into New York, the golden late afternoon light painted the cabin in warm hues. Jessica stood in the galley, preparing for the final service round when Lauren approached, 2 cups of tea in hand. The gesture was small but significant, a subtle redistribution of the usual service dynamic. I thought you might need this, Lauren said, offering one of the cups to Jessica. Ginger tea. I noticed you haven't taken breaks since we left San Francisco. The observation revealed Lauren's attention to detail, even while she had seemed absorbed in her work throughout the flight. Jessica accepted the tea with a quiet thank you, the warmth of the cup matching the flush in her cheeks. The galley, usually a space for rushed preparations and quick conversations, became a sanctuary for what would prove to be a pivotal discussion. You know, Lauren began, leaning casually against the counter, I've been thinking about what happened this morning. Not as a problem, but as an opportunity. She pulled out her tablet, showing Jessica a draft of a new initiative. Alight Airways has always focused on luxury service, but maybe we've been defining luxury too narrowly. The tablet displayed a comprehensive plan titled Redefining First Class, a new approach to premium service. Jessica's eyes widened as she scanned the document, noting how Lauren had already incorporated observations from their earlier conversations into actionable points. What strikes me most about today, Lauren continued, scrolling through the document, is not that an assumption was made, but how quickly you were willing to learn from it. That's the kind of adaptability we need as we grow. She paused, studying Jessica's reaction. Would you be interested in helping me develop this program? Before Jessica could respond, light turbulence shook the aircraft. Both women steadied themselves, the moment creating an unexpected intimacy in their shared space. As the plane stabilized, Jessica found her voice. I've spent 15 years thinking I knew exactly what first-class service meant, she admitted. Today showed me I still have so much to learn. Lauren smiled, her expression warm with understanding. That's exactly why I want your input. You have years of direct experience with our passengers. You understand the day-to-day realities of service in a way that boardroom discussions never could. She pulled up another document, this one outlining a new training program. See these sections? They're blank because I want them filled with real experiences, not just corporate theory. The conversation expanded beyond the initial incident, touching on broader themes of customer service, employee empowerment, and the changing face of luxury travel. Lauren shared stories of her own journey, including moments when she had been underestimated or overlooked. Each anecdote served not to shame, but to build bridges of understanding. Sometimes, Lauren mused, watching the sunset paint the clouds in brilliant oranges and pinks, the most valuable luxury we can offer is the space to grow and learn together. She turned to Jessica with renewed purpose. What if we created a mentorship program, not just about service protocols, but about understanding and embracing the diversity of our passengers? As they discussed the possibilities, other crew members drifted into the galley, drawn by the energy of transformation. Lauren listened intently to their experiences, jotting notes on her tablet as they shared stories of challenges and triumphs in passenger service. The descent into New York continued, the city lights beginning to twinkle below like stars reflected in dark water. In the galley of Flight 217, something remarkable is taking shape, not just a new training program or service protocol, but a fundamental shift in perspective that would ripple through the entire airline. Jessica looked at her reflection in the galley window, seeing herself differently now. The day that had begun with an assumption was ending with an invitation to be part of meaningful change. Lauren's presence in first class had sparked more than just a moment of discomfort. It had ignited a transformation that would redefine what premium service truly meant. 2 months after Flight 217, Elite Airways headquarters buzzed with renewed energy. The sleek conference room on the 42nd floor offered a panoramic view of San Francisco Bay. But today, all attention was focused on the presentation being delivered by an unlikely pair, Lauren Thompson and Jessica Martinez. Real change, Lauren began, addressing the room full of airline executives, starts with real stories. She gestured to the screen behind her, where data from their pilot program scrolled past. In just 8 weeks, our new approach to customer service has increased satisfaction scores by 30% across all cabin classes. Jessica stepped forward, her new position as Director of Service Innovation evident in her confident stance. The past 2 months had transformed her role from serving first class to reshaping how service was delivered throughout the airline. What we've learned, she explained, is that luxury isn't about assumptions. It's about attention. The presentation screen shifted to show testimonials from passengers and crew members alike. Among them was a note from Diana Chen, who had become a vocal supporter of the initiative. Elite Airways isn't just changing how they serve passengers, they're changing how the industry thinks about service itself. Lauren smiled as Jessica navigated through the slides they had prepared together. The boardroom, once an intimidating space of mahogany and leather, had become a laboratory for change. Every Wednesday morning, they hosted open forums where flight attendants could share their experiences and suggestions directly with management. Last week, Jessica continued pulling up a new slide. One of our economy passengers wrote to thank us for making her feel like a first-class guest. The image showed a handwritten note from a grandmother who had been traveling to meet her first grandchild. Our crew didn't know she was a retired airline executive. They just knew she deserved their full attention. The transformation hadn't been without its challenges. Some longtime employees had resisted the changes, comfortable in their old ways of thinking. But Lauren's approach of leading by example, combined with Jessica's deep understanding of frontline service, had gradually won over even the strongest skeptics. Look at these numbers. Lauren pointed to a graph showing employee satisfaction metrics. When we empower our team to see beyond surface appearances, job satisfaction improves. When job satisfaction improves, service excellence follows naturally. The data backed up her words. Employee retention had increased by 25% since implementing the new training program. The initiative had expanded beyond its original scope. Elite Airways had established a scholarship program for underrepresented groups in aviation, created mentorship opportunities for new employees, and implemented a revolutionary approach to customer feedback that focused on qualitative experiences rather than just numerical ratings. Jessica shared a personal observation. Last week, I watched a new flight attendant welcome a young entrepreneur in ripped jeans to first class with the same warmth she showed to a CEO in a business suit. That's when I knew we were truly changing our culture. The morning sun streamed through the conference room windows, highlighting the diversity of faces around the table. What had started as an uncomfortable moment on Flight 217 had sparked a movement within Elite Airways. Other airlines have begun to take notice, with industry publications featuring stories about the company's innovative approach to service and inclusion. Lauren concluded the presentation with a simple statement: "Success isn't about how we judge our passengers, it's about how our passengers feel when they fly with us." She glanced at Jessica, acknowledging their shared journey from that memorable flight to this moment of transformation. As the executives filed out of the conference room, several paused to shake Jessica's hand, no longer seeing just a flight attendant, but a leader in her own right. The view of San Francisco Bay sparkled beyond the windows, but the real brightness came from the promise of continued positive change taking flight within Elite Airways. 1 year after Flight 217, the grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria buzzed with excitement as the aviation industry gathered for the annual Air Travel Innovation Awards. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables filled with airline executives, while large screens displayed highlights from the year's most innovative industry developments. Lauren Thompson stood at the podium, her casual elegance now a trademark that had inspired a shift in corporate culture beyond Elite Airways. Innovation isn't always about technology, she began, surveying the room. Sometimes it's about changing how we see each other. The audience listened intently as she prepared to introduce the winner of the new Excellence in Service Innovation Award. Jessica Martinez sat at a prominent table near the front, barely recognizing herself from a year ago. Her journey from flight attendant to Elite's global head of customer experience had become a story that inspired countless others in the industry. The training program she had developed with Lauren had been adopted by 3 other major airlines, and her inbox regularly filled with messages from crew members sharing their own stories of transformation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lauren continued, "tonight we celebrate more than just improved service metrics. We celebrate a fundamental shift in how we think about luxury air travel." The screens behind her displayed images from Elite's revolutionary program, including candid shots of diverse passengers being served with equal attention and care across all cabin classes. In the audience, Diana Chen nodded appreciatively. Her tech company had become one of Elite's biggest corporate clients, drawn by their innovative approach to service. Next to her sat Mr. Anderson, who had written a widely shared LinkedIn article about witnessing the turning point on that memorable flight. "Our industry often focuses on the hardware." Lauren gestured to images of plush seats and gourmet meals. "But we've discovered that true luxury lies in how we make people feel." The screen shifted to show testimonials from passengers whose experiences have been transformed by Elite's new approach. "When we remove preconceptions from our service, we create space for genuine connections." Jessica's mind drifted to that morning a year ago, marveling at how a moment of discomfort had led to such profound change. Elite Airways had not only improved its service ratings, but had sparked a movement within the industry. Their flight attendant training program now included modules on unconscious bias, emotional intelligence, and cultural awareness, setting a new standard for airline service worldwide. The latest industry statistics appeared on screen. Elite's passenger satisfaction scores had soared across all cabin classes. Employee retention had reached record highs, and their innovative approach had earned them recognition as one of Fortune's most admired companies. But perhaps the most meaningful change, Lauren's voice softened with sincerity, has been in the everyday moments. She shared a recent story about an Elite flight attendant who had recognized a young entrepreneur in economy class and upgraded her using the new Innovation Spotters program, an initiative that empowered crew members to identify and celebrate diverse achievements among their passengers. As applause filled the ballroom, Jessica reached into her clutch and touched the boarding pass from Flight 217, now laminated and kept as a reminder of where this journey began. Lauren had suggested she keep it, saying, "Sometimes our greatest achievements start with our biggest challenges." The evening concluded with the announcement of a groundbreaking partnership between Elite Airways and several major business schools, creating a scholarship program for underrepresented groups in aviation management. Lauren and Jessica would co-chair the initiative, continuing their mission to transform the industry from the inside out. As the celebration wound down, Lauren and Jessica found themselves by the ballroom's window, the New York skyline twinkling behind them. "You know, Lauren mused, some people might say we're just talking about airline service, but we're really changing how people see and treat each other, one flight at a time." Jessica smiled, thinking of the newest class of flight attendants she would be addressing next week. "The best part," she replied, "is that this is just the beginning." Above them, the night sky was filled with the lights of aircraft, each one carrying the possibility of more moments of understanding, growth, and transformation.